Okay, so as you have already been informed, today we're gonna start with our course on international business. Uh, I think because all of you are DBA students, this is much of a common sense, let's say, course. I think all of you have gone through all of these topics, so I don't think for DBA students there is much efforts needed into, let's say, handling the topics that we gonna have in this course. Anyways, today we're gonna start with our first chapter, which will try to define the scope of international business and is going to introduce us to some of, let's say, its most important topics. So what we're gonna uh, focus on to in this first lecture is to identify the types of companies that are active in international business. We're going to also explain globalization and how it affects markets and production. We're going to also detail the forces that drive globalization nowadays, and to also outline the debate about globalization's impact on jobs and wages nowadays. We're going to summarize the debate about income inequality. We see that everywhere nowadays, and we're going to also outline the debate about culture, sovereignty, and the environment. And last but not least, we will focus also on some of the skills that we need to develop nowadays to be successful in our careers. So, as I said, we're gonna first start by defining the scope of international business. So, as a case study here, you have the case of Ray-Ban. Uh, in the oldest edition, I think you have the case of Apple. Actually, it's a perfect example of analyzing international business. So before the iPhone, what people needed is that they needed to carry cameras to take, let's say, casual photos, and needed also special devices to view, like GPS maps. So nowadays, for all those things, you simply have a smartphone. It's not only iPhone nowadays. Samsung do have Huawei and all other, let's say, mobile manufacturers. So uh, globalizations also, we have the case of Ray-Ban here. Actually, it allows them to produce and sell worldwide with little or no modification. So they don't need to actually modify their products. So they sell their standard products worldwide. And this approach helps them because it reduces their production and marketing costs, because they don't need to, let's say, adjust their production and marketing strategies to, let's say, different markets worldwide. They can use a standardized approach, and it helps them also to, because of the large global market share, to keep their marketing and production costs extremely low. However, they do have, let's say, certain challenges such as seasonal demand and counterfeit goods. So, especially in certain parts of the world, we can find fake or not original Ray-Ban sunglasses. So this is one of the main challenges that they also face nowadays. So when we talk about international business, I think that all of us do experience the results of international business. So starting from myself, let's say from the PC that I use, the headphones that I use, my shirt and everything. So starting from the label of made in, we can see that we don't have all the things that we have on ourselves, let's say, produced or manufactured in one single place. So everything is produced in different parts of the world. So if we quickly glance at the made in text on whatever we have, at the moment. We will see actually the how pervasive is international business and international business transaction. So when we talk about international business, it is defined as any commercial transaction that crosses the borders of two or more nations. And I don't think actually, I think all of us are more or less involved in these international transactions. So nowadays it's much easier for you, for all of us, for example, to buy on AliExpress, for example, on Amazon, order books or any other things. So that's also part of the international business. So no matter where we live, we will be surrounded by both imports and exports. So when we talk about imports, it's goods and services which are purchased abroad and brought into a particular country. So we have countries that export much more than they import, or the opposite. We have countries that import much more than they do export. So the counterparts uh, around the world will also undoubtedly spend some part of their day using the exports that they receive from a particular country. So these are the goods and services which are sold abroad and sent out of a particular country. So many of you would like to, let's say, eat a Swiss chocolate, which you nowadays I think is available in any market worldwide, or let's say using iPhones or using different other products which are actually exported from different other countries. So when we talk about international business, there are mainly companies that do dominate the international market, and these are companies that are or of different types and sizes, and they are engaged also in different sorts of industries, and they become involved in international business. So they do also vary, or let's say in the way they are involved in international business. So we have large companies from the wealthiest nations which dominate the international business. But nowadays, especially, we do have companies or firms from emerging markets like Brazil, China, India, and South Africa, which are trying to also compete for their global market share. Then we have also small and medium-sized companies, which more or less are increasingly becoming more active in international business. And this has been done thanks to the advances in technology. Then we have the MNCs, or the multinational corporations. In some books you can find also MNEs, multinational enterprises. And this is a business that has direct investment. It can be in the form of marketing or manufacturing subsidiaries abroad in multiple countries. And I think many of you do know lots of these companies that dominate or are present in different markets worldwide. And then we have also the born global companies. So if we consider international business competition, this has led, let's say, rise of new entity. These are the born global firms. So these are companies that from the beginning, they do adopt a global perspective, and they engage in international business from, let's say, near its inception. This was not something that we could find, let's say, in the past. But nowadays, we have lots of such companies that are, let's say, incepted, or that are founded with the objective of going immediately globally. So if we analyze, let's say, other companies that now are globally active, like multinational corporations, all of them have started, let's say, locally. So in the past, it was not possible to, let's say, have this kind of companies. So it's because of the international business competition. This has led to this new entity in the international business, which we call the born global companies. And these are companies that do adopt a global perspective from the beginning of their inception. So this graph here, I hope you can properly see it. It illustrates the relative power of the world's largest multinational corporations. So if we, let's say, for example, if we take Walmart here, so if it was a country, it would rank fourth behind Norway in terms of their economic power. So we have here Walmart. So this is based on data which were obtained from Fortune Global 500 companies, which was published in July 2016. So these are the quick study questions that I was talking earlier. I will post, because we don't have time to discuss all of them, I will post one question or two after each lecture, so then we can go and have kind of a discussion by using comments on our Facebook group. So all of you can go and comment on them. So we move to the main topic of today's lecture, which is globalization. So when we talk about globalization, it's something that we find or we hear on a daily basis. So it's a name that we give to the trend that is ongoing toward greater economic, cultural, political, and technological interdependence among national institutions and economies. So when we talk about globalization, is characterized by two things, and this is the denationalization, which is referring to national boundaries which are becoming obsolete, or they are becoming less relevant. And on the other side, also it incorporates internationalization, which is the opposite of denationalization, where entities that cooperate across national boundaries are becoming more relevant nowadays. Also, we have the globalization of markets, which refers to the convergence in buyer preferences in markets worldwide, so around the world. And then we have also the globalization of production, which refers to the dispersal of production activities to locations that help a company achieve its cost minimization or quality maximization objectives for a good or service. So, for example, Apple iPhones. So, although it's a US-based company, so the products and the product itself, the iPhone, is assembled in China, and that you can see. All of you, if you have an iPhone, you can see it on at the back of your iPhone. It's written there. So this is what we mean, what we refer to when we talk about the globalization of production. Although the company is based or founded in a particular country, still they disperse the production activities and of their products to locations that will help the company to achieve its cost minimization or quality maximization objectives for a good or services. So here we have it. When we talk about the globalization of markets, it has particular benefits for the companies that engage in international business. The first thing is reducing the marketing costs. So if we have companies that do sell global products, they can reduce costs by standardizing certain marketing activities. We had the case of, let's say, Ray-Ban that we mentioned earlier. So companies can achieve further cost savings objectives by keeping, let's say, and adds visual components the same for all markets, or by what they can do is they can dub TV ads and translate print ads into local languages. So I think we have the case of Coca-Cola. So they use, let's say, more or less the same ads worldwide. Then the second benefits of globalization of markets is that it creates new market opportunities. So if you have a company that sells a global product, they can explore opportunities abroad if its home market is smaller, becomes saturated. So I think this is, let's say, one of the main objectives why the companies do engage in international business, because the market they actually operate, it seems, or it might be small for them. So they look for other opportunities that they can only find in the international market. And then the next benefit is levels uneven income streams. So a company that sells a product with universal but seasonal, seasonal appeal, they can use international sales to level its income stream. Also, the local buyers' needs is one of the benefits of globalization of markets. So, by seeking potential benefits of global markets, what the managers do is that they must, on a constant basis, monitor the match between the foreign products and the markets in order to make sure that they do not overlook the needs of the buyer. So they want to make sure that they do satisfy the needs of their buyers. That's why the managers should monitor them on an ongoing basis. So the benefit of serving customers with an adapted product may actually outweigh the benefit of a standardized one. And then we have the global sustainability, which is another need that these multinationals must consider. So this is the need among all the world's citizens for sustainability. This, which is actually a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And besides the globalization of markets, the globalization of products or of production does also have certain benefits for organizations that do operate globally. And the first thing is access to a lower cost workers. So I mentioned the case of Apple earlier. So that's why they moved, for example, all the let's say the production process to China, because there they can access lower cost workers. Or this is what, for example, some other companies did and do at the moment. So global production activities will allow companies to reduce overall production costs to access to low-cost labor. Also, access to technical expertise. Companies also produce goods and services abroad in order to benefit from technical know-how that is prevalent in that particular country. And the last thing is that they get access to production inputs. So remember, I think you have discussed this when we talk about the when we talk about the economy in general. Let's actually, so we talk about the transformation of inputs into outputs. So we have the inputs, and then we have the outputs that we sell to the customers, and from what we sell, actually we buy other inputs so that we can transfer them into inputs. So globalization of production allows companies to access resources that are not available or might cost much at home. So by moving globally or in another country, they get access to these particular resources in most of the cases, which can be also, let's say, uh, materials, but it can be also human resources as well. So the quest for natural resources draws many companies into international markets as well. So here we come to the quick study 2 and the questions that we have, which we, as I said, I will let you know on which questions you will have to work. So as we said in the beginning, it's important that we do understand also some of the forces that have driven globalizations. We talked a little bit about that, but we have to understand that companies nowadays, especially, they can go almost anywhere in the world. Actually, in order to find or to get more favorable business climate that is prevalent. On the other side, we have also many countries that try to attract these foreign investors. So, for example, especially nowadays, an employee, we can say it, an Asian uh, subsidiary of a global television maker packages TVs headed for, let's say, global export market. So we have also US businesses that use technology to subcontract work to Chinese companies that write computer code and then email their end product to the US clients as well. So companies have started to use these particular tactics in order to minimize their costs, to increase efficiency, and to also grow more competitive. We said also that they want to leverage also the benefits that this international market offers to them, because their local markets might be really small actually to satisfy their appetite. So what they do, they just move for globally. So these are some of the forces that actually drive globalization. The first thing is actually the falling barriers to trade and investment. So we have less and less barriers nowadays to trade and investment. Let's say, for example, in the past, before the EU existed, there were, um, let's say, more barriers to trade and investment. But nowadays, with the EU, there are less trade and investment. But even worldwide, there are different agreements, mutual agreements. There are different organizations that have created or have helped to, let's say, destroy these particular barriers to trade and investment. So it's much easier nowadays to trade and invest globally. So here we have some of the, let's say, some of the policies, some of the organizations that are involved in removing these particular barriers. So we have the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. We have the World Trade Organization. Also, we have other international organizations that do foster better, let's say, international trade and investment, such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And then we have also regional trade agreements. I mentioned the European Union earlier, and also the trade and the national output as well. Another driver of globalization, as we I think mentioned earlier, is the technological innovation. So without technology, I don't think myself personally that it would have been, let's say, much easier to nowadays do business internationally. So although falling barriers to trade and investment, they do encourage globalization. It's particularly technology that help to accelerate the pace of international business. So the innovations that happened in information technology and different other transportation methods are actually making it easier, faster, and less costly to move data, goods, and equipment around the world. So we have e-business nowadays. Lots of companies that do engage in e-business. We mentioned Amazon earlier. So they use uh, computer networks to purchase, sell, or exchange products, to also service customers and to collaborate with partners. Then we have also email and video conferencing. So nowadays, due to COVID outbreak, if the technology was not there, or let's say if technology was not there, so these classes would not have been possible. Like doing an online DBA actually would not have been possible. Also, the invention of internet. So that's why now they try to move to 5G, for example. So it makes this, let's say, exchange of data much easier. So companies, they use internet to quickly and inexpensively contact managers in distant locations. So companies that operate globally nowadays, they find it much easier uh, to cooperate between their branches and headquarters, for example. Also, if internet was not there, so imagine now when all the people due to COVID-19 had to go to actually isolate themselves, so would not have been possible to do home office. And we see as a trend that many companies nowadays, even after COVID-19, they let's say have continued to use home office because have seen that actually it has been an effective tool. So let's say certain days, I just know some of friends of mine. So let's say they particular days they go to work, but there are certain days that they can choose to work from home as well. Then we have the company intranets and extranets, which are internal company websites and information networks which give employees access to company data using personal computers. And then we have also the advancement in transportation technology that has driven globalization. So innovation in the shipping industry is helping globalize markets and production by making shipping more efficient and dependable. So myself, I do use, for example, as I mentioned earlier, Amazon and AliExpress. So sometimes in 1 week I get, let's say, goods that I buy online to Switzerland. Whereas in Switzerland, for example, usually if you buy something until, let's say, 5 each day, so the next morning you have the goods delivered throughout Switzerland in your doorstep. So it's actually the advancement in transportation and technology that has made it much easier globalization. So if we look at this figure on table 1.1, it shows this index actually ranks nations on 23 variables within three dimensions. So it's the economic globalization, trade and investment volume, trade and capital restrictions. On the social globalization, which is dissemination of information and ideas, and the political globalization, which is the political cooperation with other countries. So if we see in the overall rank, for example, is the Netherlands. So their economic rank is 4, and their political rank is 5. So on the other side, we have Switzerland, which is ranked 5. So all of them actually are EU countries. So Switzerland is their overall rank is 5th. In terms of their economic globalization, which we said refers to the trade and investment volumes and trade and capital restrictions, they rank actually 22nd, but they do rank second on the social globalization, which is the dissemination of information and ideas. So as I said, as we also explained in the beginning, we can also touch a little bit on the inequalities when it comes to wages and jobs globally. So we have seen how globalization benefits companies and nations, but there is not everyone that agrees with globalization. There are also people that are against globalization and that think that globalization is not having, let's say, positive effects on. There are people that think that actually globalization has had also negative effects. So we have also the group that opposes globalization, and they blame it for eroding standards of living and ruining way of life. So those especially, they say that globalization eliminates jobs and lowers wages in developed nations and exploits workers in developing countries. And these arguments are as follows. The first argument of those that oppose globalization think that it's globalization that eliminates jobs in developed nations. So these are groups that claim that globalization uh, eliminates the manufacturing jobs in developed nations. So they do criticize the practice of sending good-paying manufacturing jobs abroad to developing countries where wages are a fraction of the cost for international firms. So this is why they criticize these global companies. It's because they move the jobs to other developing nations, and they are not, let's say, offering these jobs in developed or in their nations where they operate. Also, they do criticize globalization to lower wages in developed nations. So they say globalization causes worker dislocation that gradually lowers their wages. And these people that do oppose globalization, they say that this also decreases employee loyalty to the companies, employee morale, and also job security. And because of these things, people now fear globalization and any additional lowering of trade barriers. And the last thing is the exploit of workers in developing nations. So this is what many of these companies have been accused of. So we have had the video that was actually broadcasted on YouTube uh, from where actually Apple is manufacturing or assembling their iPhones and how they treat their workers there. So these people that oppose globalization, they think that these multinational companies, they do exploit workers in their developing nations. So these critics charge the globalization international outsourcing to exploit workers in low wage nations. So if you look at the figure 1.2, it actually illustrates the way Western companies can outsource such work to emerging markets, let's say for a small amount of money of what they pay at their home countries, for example. So they see how much actually they benefit only by outsourcing their I mean, like the manufacturing of their products worldwide. So these, uh, as long as these, how to say, economic disparities exist, international outsourcing will continue to be popular. Also, on the other side, we have those people that support globalization. So these people that support globalization, they think that globalization improves standards of living and making possible new ways of life. So they think that globalization increases wealth and efficiency in all nations, and it also generates labor market flexibility in developed nations. So, why these people support globalization is they think that globalization increases wealth and efficiency in all nations. It also helps to generate labor market flexibility in developed nations, and it also helps to advance the economies of developing nations. So these people that favor globalization, they think that globalization and international outsourcing will help also those local companies there to advance and to also help these nations by only moving these companies from developed nations to develop economically as well. So the debate over income inequalities is something that has been something we to debate and talk about on a daily basis. So there are three main aspects of this particular debate, and this is the inequality that happens within nations. So this is the wage gap between white collar and blue collar occupations in rich nations. So this is where the opponents of globalizations argue that freer trade and investment will allow international companies to close factories in high wage developed nations, and then they move to let's say low wage developing nations. So they argue that this increases the wage gap between white collar and blue collar occupations in rich nations. Then we have the inequality between nations. So this is the widening gap that happens in average income between the rich and poor nations. So we live, let's say myself, I live in Switzerland, and someone else living in, let's say, much poorer countries in the world. So for the same job, the salaries are different. And then we have also the global inequality. This is the third aspect, and this is referring to the widening income inequality between all people of the world. So when we talk about this inequality debate, studies do suggest that developing nations can boost incomes of their poorer citizens by embracing actually globalization and by integrating themselves into this global economy. So by using global markets and by using global production. Also, economies that remain sheltered from the global economy, they tend to be actually worse off. And finally, regarding the this particular debate over inequality, uh, experts they disagree on the although there is let's say this inequality has fallen in recent decades, but still they disagree actually on the extent of this particular drop, because they think there is not much done in this particular aspect. Another important thing is globalization and culture. So due to globalization, uh, national cultures have been also affected largely. So when we talk about national culture, it's a strong shaper of people's values, attitudes, customs, beliefs, and communications. So whether globalization eradicates cultural differences between groups of people or reinforces cultural uniqueness, this is something that actually has been debated hotly on an international arena. So one of the advantages of globalization is that it allows us to profit from our differing circumstances and skills. And you can see yourself, you can see in this classroom, for example, we have people coming from different countries. We have people coming from different cultural and religious background. But still, there might be certain, uh, let's say, cultural aspects that are uh, more or less similar. And this is because of the effects of globalization on reinforcing actually cultural uniqueness. So this is what they consider, they think to be, uh, let's say, a disadvantage of globalization, because it homogenizes our world and destroys our rich diversity of cultures. Because they think that actually globalizations creates homogeneity among different cultures. So those in this particular case, those that support globalization, they argue that we profit from our differing circumstances and skills. So a trade that allows countries to specialize in producing the goods and services that they can produce most efficient. Also, we have, I mean, like the national sovereignty that is debated with regards to globalization. And those that oppose globalization think that the nations do lose their sovereignty due to globalization. So when we talk about the national sovereignty, it generally involves the idea that a nation state is autonomous, can freely select its government, cannot intervene in the affairs of other nations, can control movements across its borders, and can enter into binding international agreements. So when we talk about globalization, those that oppose globalization think that one of the disadvantages of globalization is that it is considered to be a menace to democracy. So uh, it empowers supranational institutions at the expense of national government. So when we talk about supranational institutions, those refer to some of the organizations that we mentioned earlier as well, like World Trade Organization and World Bank and the likes. And the those that support globalization, they argue that an amazing consequence of globalization has been the spread of democracy worldwide. Also, we have those that do debate actually the effects of globalization on environment, and those that support globalization say that globalization, by using, let's say, these international firms, they support these environmental laws that have been enacted, because according to them, they want to expand future local markets for their goods and services. So they recognize that healthy future markets require a sustainable approach to business expansion. And those that consider that globalization has negative effects on environment, they say that globalization causes a race to the bottom in environmental conditions and regulations. However, studies have shown that pollution-intensive U.S. companies, they tend to invest in countries that do have stricter environmental standards. So that does not hold true that actually countries do go to invest in countries where they don't have strict environmental standards. And as part of globalization, as we mentioned earlier, and this is why actually lots of study programs worldwide, they are becoming, let's say, more unique, because there are certain skills that we need to develop in order to be able to operate in an international market. So by using this course, students will be able to develop certain useful capabilities for your future employment internationally. So the first thing is critical thinking, which involves purposeful and goal-directed thinking. So you can use this to define and solve problems, to make decisions, to form judgments which are related to a set of circumstances. Then the second thing is business ethics and social responsibility nowadays. So these are guiding principles that will influence your way and the way the organizations will behave in the society that you operate. The course will also help you develop communication skills that you will need to operate globally. So nowadays, wherever you go in any, let's say, company, uh, we rarely find, so I don't know the countries where you come from, let's say mono-ethnic work places. So even if it's in a particular country, we still have people that come from different cultures. So you will have to develop skills, communication skills in particular, oral, written, and non-verbal language skills and technology, in order to communicate, let's say, a means of doing business across national borders, how to communicate across languages, how to communicate across cultures. So these are important skills that you will need to develop in order to be able to work or to have an international career. And then knowledge application and analysis, which refers to the ability to learn a concept and appropriately apply that particular knowledge in another setting to achieve a higher level of understanding. So let's say you come, all of you, from different countries. So this knowledge that you acquire here, you will be you you will have to be able to actually apply it in different countries where you operate. So you will need to, let's say, different kind of application, and you will have to do a different kind of analysis based on the environment in which you operate. So we have the figure 1.3, which actually explains the global business environment, and it identifies the four main components of the global business environment and the subparts of it. So all of them will actually be explained one by one in this lecture. So here you have chapter 1 where we discuss globalization, and then we will move with the rest of the chapters for today, where we're going to talk about cross-cultural business, the political economy and ethics, and we're going to talk also about the economic development of nations. And then we will move to the international arena, where we will focus on international trade theory, political economy of trade, foreign direct investments, the regional economic integration, and the international financial markets and international monetary systems. And we will conclude with technological innovation, increasing competition, and falling trade barriers, which we explain to be the main barrier, the main drivers of globalization.